Hi, I'm Claudia, and this is the Personal Pivot Podcast. This podcast is about pivots, the moments in life when things shift, sometimes by choice, sometimes without asking your permission first. We talk about careers, yes, but we also talk about family and responsibility and identity and growth because most pivots don't happen one at a time. They happen while you're holding a lot of other things together, or at least in my case, while trying to hold many other things together. If you're listening or watching because you're thinking about making a change or because life has already made one for you, I do want you to hear some of this first. First thing is you're not behind. Second thing is you're not broken. And the third thing is you're not alone. I created this podcast to share real pivot stories, not highlight reels, not overnight success stories, but genuine, real stories from people who have had to adapt, who have had to rebuild and redefine what success looks like along the way. And before I bring on any guests in future episodes, I want to start here and I want to start with my own story. If you know me personally, or if you looked at my LinkedIn profile today, you might see there's an MBA or there's leadership experience, and some might assume that my path was pretty straightforward. And I can tell you, I promise you, it was not. Before any of that, I was a high school dropout, which if those of you who I went to high school with are on, you'll know this is true. And for a long time, that label followed me. It followed me quietly, but it followed me constantly. It shaped oftentimes how I saw myself, what I believed I was capable of, and what I thought I was allowed to want. I always felt like there were limitations because of this. Now, for me, going back to school wasn't a dramatic decision. It was slow, it was uncomfortable, and it definitely came with a lot of self-doubt. I questioned whether I belong in those rooms, whether I was smart enough, whether I had waited too long. And I didn't go back to school because I felt fearless. I went back to school because staying stuck where I was scared me more. And not to say that if you don't go back, you are stuck. But for me, that was the case. I always felt like something was holding me back. And for me, earning my MBA wasn't about providing anything to anyone else. It was really about rewriting my story that I had been feeling and that I had been telling myself for years. So around the age of 27, and again, some of you may know this, some of you may not, which is around the same time that I decided to go back to school. It's all a little blurry for me, but around the age of 27, life handed me a responsibility that I really hadn't planned for. And I can tell you right now, I was not ready for it. And I don't think anyone who becomes a parent, whether it's through natural ways of starting a family or it happens all of a sudden, I don't think anyone's ever ready. But I can tell you at 27 years old, I became the guardian of two girls. My mother and I became guardians of two girls. And at that time, again, I was thought I have more than enough time to figure out what I want to do. But at that moment, that wasn't the case. Suddenly, my life wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just my life. The decisions that I was making weren't about what I wanted in the moment. They were about stability, they were about safety, and they were about showing up. As I was still figuring out adulthood while helping guide two young lives, I did learn that sometimes growth doesn't wait until you're ready. It happens instantly. It happens during those moments of pivot that you're, again, either prepared for or not. All of this was happening in my mind. All of this was happening in my life. At the same time, my mom's role and my role flipped. And I don't know if this has happened to any of you, but when you have a single mom who's been taking care of you for a long, long time and trying to teach you the ropes, somewhere around your 20s, ideally would happen sooner, but it didn't happen for me. But somewhere around my early 20s, the roles started switching. And I slowly became responsible for a little bit more. I took on some of that responsibility. I grew up thinking I'm going to get to the point where my mom doesn't have to work anymore. And that's what happened. But when my mom and I got our girls, It was emotionally heavy. It was exhausting for both of us to flip the roles of who's responsible for the home and who's being taken care of at the same time that we're trying to take care of two new lives. And a lot of the work that we did was, in fact, invisible work. Not a lot of people knew it was happening, but it was really happening. And there were days where I was balancing work, I was balancing school. I was trying to learn how to parent from my mom. She did a lot of the early parenting. I was trying to figure out how to become responsible for a household and trying to be strong for everyone else while quietly running on empty. That's something that I look back on now, and absolutely I was on empty. At that time, it didn't feel like it. And that season changed how I define success. Success stopped being about titles or timelines. I felt once I get promoted, I'll call that a success. Another promotion, I'll call that a success. If by the time I'm X, this happens, that's a success. It stopped. And it started being about resilience, started being about presence and endurance for myself and for my mom. Now, looking back, I didn't experience one pivot at a time. I also didn't do this alone, right? I feel like things like this that are life-changing definitely takes a village. And I had a village with me. But these experiences, again, it was not one pivot at a time. They overlapped, they collided, they piled on top of each other. But here's what I learned. I learned that you can be behind in one area of your life, at least to your standard, and ahead in another. You can be strong and be overwhelmed at the same time. A pivot isn't a clean turn. It's a series of small decisions made up under pressure, often while you're carrying more than other people realize. My backpack was heavy and I kept filling it with whatever I could find to try to make the life that myself, my mom, and my girls had a real life. So I wanted to share that with you, and I'll keep talking about this in the future. But I myself have had all these pivots that have happened throughout my life that have shaped who I am now and will continue to shape who I will be in the future. This podcast is for anyone who's ever thought, I didn't plan for this. I wasn't ready for this. Am I doing this right? What if I go that direction, but I was supposed to go in another direction? You may have those questions. This podcast is for people navigating pivots in their careers and with your families, with your identities, with your lives. And in episodes ahead, what I'm looking forward to bringing to you is real stories from people who've pivoted in powerful and unexpected ways. And if you're in the middle of your own pivot, especially one that you didn't choose, remember, you're not behind. You are becoming whatever version of yourself is up next. And it's not a final version. That's something that I wish someone had told me early on. The next thing you do is not the final thing you do. It will help you become. So I appreciate you being here. Thank you for being here. This is Personal Pivot Podcast.